For over 60 years, the University of Saskatchewan has provided leadership and demonstrated proven strength in medical physics and accelerator technology. We have advanced areas of research and treatment with work that has benefited millions around the world. Our university is rich with the history of many of our innovators, and their stories continue to inspire us and guide us. In the 1940s, Canada was using nuclear technology for cancer research and treatment, and the University of Saskatchewan was leading the way.
Back in 1920, people were most afraid of tuberculosis. Cancer and heart disease were not on the radar. Cancer was rare, relatively speaking. Gradually, cancer increased in numbers each year. The doctors got studying cancer and ways of treating cancer, and of course, radium was the first medium used, and ridiculously small amounts of radium would be used to treat cancer of the lip and cancer of the tongue and cancer of the cervix in women. And people kept wondering if there wouldn't be a better way. Deep-seated tumors were basically out of practical reach until the super voltage methods were discovered, and the first efforts were made in Saskatchewan. The first machine using the Betatron, which was manufactured for Saskatchewan by Alice Chalmers in Milwaukee.
Hello, Dr. Katz, Dr. Haslam. This is the famous Saskatchewan Betatron, is it?
That's right.
Is it possible
Doctors Katz, Haslam, and Johns were responsible for bringing the Betatron to the University of Saskatchewan. It was the first of its kind to be used in a university or hospital.
Harold Johns had a great strength of attracting bright young people to him, and the brightest of them all was Sylvia Fedoric.
Dr. Johns started a number of us off with extra jobs to do for some of the research work that he was doing, and I got involved in the research. So by the time I got to by end of my third year, the idea of bringing a cobalt unit into being here at the university, getting the radioactive cobalt installed in a machine that would be designed here in Saskatoon, was on the table, and I was one of 4 students that were picked to work on the project with Dr. Johns.
Well, the cobalt discussions began as they were starting to treat the first patients with the Betatron. They were already thinking ahead about a less expensive treatment that could be used worldwide.
What you do is you place tiny discs of Cobalt-59, which is a non-radioactive isotope of cobalt, and they're bombarded by the neutrons in the reactor, and the neutrons that are captured in the nuclei of the Cobalt-59 becomes nuclei of Cobalt-60. And this is radioactive, and it gives off the radiation that Dr. Johns wanted to have. The machine was designed in a tiny machine shop, was on Idlewild Drive. The graduate student by the name of Lloyd Bates drew up the plans for the treatment unit.
I've heard this is a very powerful unit, Dr. Johns. Just where does the power come from?
The power comes from 25 discs of cobalt.
They're just like coins, aren't
Yes, so they're about the size of a 25-cent piece. These coins were activated in Canada's atomic energy pile in Chalk River. The useful beam emerges from this head coming out through this opening. Of course, the main purpose of the machine is in the treatment of cancer patients under Dr. Watson.
Well, Dr. Watson, how does this method differ from other methods of treating cancer?
Well, you must realize that there's no new principle involved in the use of this machine. X-ray machines have been used for 50 years in the treatment of cancer. This machine, however, because of the great penetrating powers of the rays produced, allows one to concentrate a large dose in deep-seated cancers without too much damage to the overlying normal tissues.
At the same time, a similar machine was being built at the University of Western Ontario, and the race was on to be the first to deliver Cobalt-60 treatment.
There was great pressure at the time to who was going to treat the first patient. And Dr. Sandy Watson, the head of the cancer clinic here, was a very tough individual. He said he wasn't going to treat the first patient until he absolutely was sure that we had the right information about the dose, so that there was no damage done to the patient, that it was an attempted cure.
When Western Ontario got their machine and claimed to be first in the world to use it on cancer patients in the case of the cobalt, they took a dying patient and put that patient under the rays, hoping to get maybe some palliation, maybe to improve their lot for their last days a bit. And the patient died not too many months later. In Saskatchewan, the very first patient which had extensive incurable cancer in the pelvis lived to be over 90, and she had got this precise dosage because they had spent 9 months calibrating the Betatron, and then they could calibrate the cobalt in about 7 weeks. But a very different approach.
Dr. Harold Johns and his group of graduate students, including Sylvia Fedorik, Ed Epp, Doug Cormack, and Lloyd Bates, delivered the first doses of Cobalt-60 to successfully treat a patient. The team, including Sylvia Fedorik and Ed Epp, were also responsible for developing radiation dose calculation tables that became the world standard for depth and dose measurements. These standards are still referred to today.
The original Cobalt-60 unit treated 6,728 patients over 21 years.
Well, when I was finished with the treatments, it was on the 23rd of December, and I looked at the Christmas tree and wondered if I'd see any more Christmases. But I have seen everyone since. I just want to thank the man that made that machine that saved my life, and many, many more. It's just wonderful.
Tommy Douglas, the Premier of Saskatchewan, had okayed development of the world's first cobalt bomb to treat cancer after a single visit from Alan Blair and Harold Johns. I'm sure that nowhere else in the world would there have been a Premier who would have given the support wholeheartedly and without any limitation to the development of an entirely new system for treating cancer.
The University of Saskatchewan Cobalt-60 unit is now on permanent display at the Western Development Museum in Saskatoon. The WDM considers the cobalt bomb to be one of the most important artifacts in its collection. Cobalt-60 treatment has saved the lives of millions of cancer patients around the world. This is very much a Saskatchewan and a Saskatoon story.
It is just a wonderful story, and I think it's fulfilling to feel that I was around for the start of it all.
Today, the Canadian Light Source is building on our tradition of leadership and innovation. The work being done on the biomedical imaging and therapy beamlines is resulting in a whole new approach to image the body in order to view, understand, and detect disease.
So a lot of the work that I do is in developing imaging methods, finding better ways to image, pushing the sensitivity. Maybe we can look at breast cancer at its earliest stages here, and then possibly at someday maybe even look at it on the front end, meaning that we image those tissues or image a woman prior to surgery, or maybe even looking for earliest stages, the signs of cancer, and it's again using a synchrotron-specific method to do that. In this area of using the synchrotron and maybe these other modalities as well, it is a fantastic environment. We're just set up for success. We're attracting people who will come here in part for clinical service, which is very important, but also to push the limits and use BEAMIT or any of the beam lines here to do things. And I think we're going to attract a new class, and it's going to turn this place into becoming maybe where things are done like it was during the cobalt therapy days. This is where it started. It's going to happen again. I can guarantee you that.
The University of Saskatchewan and the Canadian Centre for Nuclear Innovation are poised to become global leaders in nuclear research and will guide the use of a new set of tools that will include a cyclotron and a PET CT scanner for medical imaging.
One of the things that nuclear medicine is very good at and excels at is functional imaging. Not just seeing what anatomy is, that this is where all the parts are and that's where they need to be or whatever. Anatomy is very important, but also functions of things are very important. So I see a lot of synergy between the things we do using X-rays and fitting very well, very seamlessly with what you would do with either PET CT or even conventional nuclear medicine techniques.
The overall purpose of the center is to place Saskatchewan among the global leaders in nuclear research, development, and training through partnerships between academia and industry and other research institutions. The tradition of excellence, the tradition of pioneering, the University of Saskatchewan that started the cobalt treatment that has affected so many millions of patients in a beneficial way over the decades, that spirit of pioneering is here again, being reawakened as we assemble key resources and we put in place a framework that stimulates creativity, ideas, leadership, championship. We're creating the conditions for pioneers to come forward and lead Saskatchewan and the world into the next phase of benefits of nuclear medicine, nuclear materials science, nuclear energy, and nuclear effects on society.
And so, the university continues to build on the strength of its pioneers. As we innovate, we celebrate the proud history of the University of Saskatchewan.